Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts and other stuff they're involved in. My guest today is not only a martial artist, but an actor, a stuntman, and a motion capture artist based in Tokyo, Japan. At age 15, he became the Michigan State Junior Olympic Taekwondo champion in sparring and forms 6 days after earning his black belt. After moving to Tokyo, he started off working as a bodyguard for everyone from Sylvester Stallone, Orlando Bloom, and Jackie Chan. His action career began in 2004 when he was cast in Godzilla: Final Wars. He's appeared in over 100 films, commercials, and video games in Asia and the U.S. He can speak, read, and act in both Korean and Japanese. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Chuck Johnson. How you doing today, sir?
I'm good, sir. How are you doing? I'm
doing great. I appreciate all my guests when they take time to do this, but especially when it's the wacky time difference like us. So you're my third or fourth guest now in the last month. That's been the next day for them. So it's 10 a.m. for you Saturday morning and 8 p.m. for me on Friday night. So I do appreciate the time to make this happen.
As things go. So yeah, I think it's great that you had Keith Vargo on earlier as well.
Yes, Keith was awesome, and he's the one that recommended you. That's one thing that's my show. I'd say at this point now, 80 to 90% of my guests come from referrals from other guests, which is great. I mean, I started the show. I did roughly 25 episodes before I even launched it. I fully reached out to and recorded and edited 25 or 26 full episodes, and from that, probably got me my next 50. They just kept like,
nice.
You should talk to this person. You should talk to this. And there's, a handful of guests that have got me a ton. I got one or two guests that have probably gotten me double-digit guests. So I truly appreciate it. And I'm always looking for referrals to keep it going. I haven't missed a week yet. I just released episode 174 yesterday. Yeah, you're episode 177.
Awesome. Yeah, if I think of anybody, I'll absolutely send them your way.
Cool.
Keith is awesome, and I think he's one of the guy's just an encyclopedia of knowledge about martial arts. He's one of those people that I can just talk to for hours and hours because he just knows so much about so many various topics in the world of martial arts.
Yep.
From everything from the traditional stuff all the way up to modern MMA. Like he's amazing. True, like custodian of knowledge, right?
Yeah. And those are the fun, those are the people I love talking to,
Exactly. So if you had to have anybody on this show, like I'm glad you started with Keith because he's phenomenal.
Yeah. And like I said, there's some where it's a struggle to get, more than a 1 or 2 word answer. I've had a few that I had 1 or 2 interviews that I didn't even air. I didn't even release the episodes because they sounded bad. It's like, well, this is my 15th podcast I've been on. It doesn't sound like you've ever been on one in your life. I'm sorry. I didn't say that to him, but it's like, there's been some that were really hard to edit and really hard to make sound good. And I've been editing audio.
You got to talk, bro. You got to talk.
Exactly. So I screen fairly well, and I that's why the recommendations help. I've had very few that have reached out to me directly and said, hey, I want to be on your podcast. And a couple of those have gone well and a couple have not. So
have you, speaking of that, have you had a chance to speak with Stu Fulton yet?
No, I have not. The name does.
Stu would be an absolutely fascinating person. He's an MMA commentator.
Oh, okay.
He's just this ginormous Scottish guy.
Okay.
So like I'm about 6'2", and it's rare that I meet somebody and I see them and I'm like, whoa, that's a big guy.
Okay, cool.
But Stu is one of those guys. He's huge and he's Scottish. Former professional MMA fighter.
Okay.
And now he's an MMA commentator. And he commentates in Japanese. Right.
I think one of my guests has actually mentioned him because that name does sound familiar, and I have had. I've had one other commentator, 1 or 2 other commentators. I had Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Smith was on my show. He was an MMA commentator. But yeah, no, that would definitely, I'll reach out to him for sure.
Absolutely. So he's, I've known Stu for years now. He actually helped me find the dojo that I'm in now.
Nice.
And then also when I was doing my martial arts show on YouTube, How to Defeat Dudes, when I was doing that more regularly, the episode that I had him on as a special guest was one of the ones that went viral.
Okay.
You know, so he's just an amazing human being,
Nice.
Extremely smart guy,
Nice.
very, very smart, level-headed, objective, very articulate. He'd
Okay.
be an awesome guest for you.
Cool.
He is my strong recommendation.
Very cool.
There you go. There's my reference.
Hey, I like it. What I like to do with all my guests, I want to go back to the very beginning. I know I mentioned, at 15, you became the Michigan State champion and stuff, but I want to know where it started, where that first interest came from, where that first spark came from that kicked off your martial arts journey.
Well, for me, I mean, it started because I was a kid in Detroit, and I've never particularly been one of those kind of alpha male types of people. I'm just not. Generally, I'm really casual. I'm really chill, and as a function of my personality, coming from the place that I was the kind of kid that got bullied a lot. Right. So around the time I was 12, I discovered Jackie Chan movies. I was like, wait a minute, somebody's systemized fighting. There's like systems for this, and you can study and learn these systems. That's incredible. Right. So then I got super obsessed, and, like a lot of kids from the hood, like at that age, I just got a bunch of VHS tapes and would just sit there and just rewind the VHS tape and just watch it over and over and like try to copy the moves. And then eventually I moved out of Detroit, moved to a suburb of Lansing called Okemos. And then I ended up being best friends with a Korean guy who was really into Taekwondo. And he said, you should come and do Taekwondo with me. And I didn't even know what Taekwondo was, really. I mean, I just, except for like, the guy, remember the show Quantum Leap? And there's a guy from Quantum Leap who would always say, I know Taekwondo. And he would do the same like spin crescent kick in every single episode. For me, that spin crescent kick was Taekwondo, right? Because that was my only reference, was the guy from Quantum Leap. But
that's funny.
Yeah. So I said, all right, well, I guess spin crescent kicks are cool. So I guess I'll go in and try Taekwondo. So I went and I tried it, but because I'd already been so obsessed with Jackie Chan movies, I could already do the splits when I started, and I already had a sense of, a lot of it was wrong, but I already had a sense of how to kick and how to punch and things. So I took to it faster than I've ever taken to anything. And then I was like, oh my God, wait, I'm good at something. I've never been good at anything before. So then I got super obsessed with it. So then I just started training, 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day, blah, blah, blah. And then, that was the impetus as to how I got started. It was the first thing I was ever actually good at.
So I always got to ask, especially when someone mentions that, Taekwondo is one of their main systems or their first system, because that's my core system. That's the one I've been in the longest of all the systems I've trained in. So do you remember do you remember which system it was, like which Kwon?
Oh, I'm from the World Taekwondo Federation, the Olympic style. Okay.
So did you guys, which forms did you guys do?
We did the Taeguk forms.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never liked those. We do the Paul Gay, and a lot of schools connected to us do the Taeguk. My instructors never liked him either, so he luckily never.
The Taeguk
made
forms
us do
are kind
them.
of they're made to be basic.
Yeah.
So I've never learned the Paul Gay forms. I would have loved to have learned them. They look super cool.
And I've never been a fan of forms in general, but if I had to pick, definitely the Paul Gay. My whole thing when I look at both of them side by side is they look more traditional. The Taeguk ones have the shorter stance. They're not as wide, not as narrow, they're not as wide, not as deep. And the Paul Gay ones were deep, wide, traditional stances. And that's always what I saw. It just looked a little more modern with the Taeguk, and I didn't like that.
Yeah, they're definitely not as cool as some of the other ones,
Nice.
but it's just, so I came up in WTF, but interestingly enough, my instructor he got his first and second dan in ITF before he switched to WTF for his third dan, because he wanted to make a bid for the Olympics in '88.
Okay.
So basically, I was raised doing WTF style Olympic Taekwondo, but we also learned all of the black belt ITF forms.
Oh. Okay.
And then also, he taught us Hapkido. And then, I think a lot of really good martial arts masters, in fact, I think most really good martial arts masters dabble in everything. They have their one core system.
Right.
It's the one thing that they know better than everything. But then they take a whole bunch of other stuff and they just kind of integrate it in to create something that's organic and that's natural to them, right?
Yeah.
And it's much more enriching than just learning one system by itself.
Yeah.
So, he had also been like a high school wrestler. He'd done boxing as well. He had a brown belt in Hapkido. So he integrated all those things into the training as well. Was my original background.
See, and I always tell people, my original, so I started in Tang Soo Do when I was 10, and I did Shotokan when I was in high school. I didn't start Taekwondo until I was in college. But my original Taekwondo instructor, I tell everyone he was my John Kreese. He was all about competition, didn't care if his students got hurt, and he actually tried to forbid us from training in other styles.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, because I was taking Aikido at the same time, and I'm like, dude, you can't stop me.
Yeah, that's super old school. So I know my sabum, if I went to another school, goodness gracious. Yeah, that was end of the world, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just how, I think that's how it was back in the day.
For me, this was in the early 90s, but the funny part is that his instructor was also my current instructor's instructor. They both came up in the same system, and their instructor encouraged them to study other things. So it was just this guy. This guy he didn't want to lose students. He was just kind of being a dick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's just, you know, if you look at like the old school, like Kung Fu movies, it was all about like Ching Wu school versus that school. Yes. And, you know, I mean, that's at least in Asia, that's very, very much how things were. So, but, you know, you can agree with that or not. I think there's merit. Well, I mean, I think the good thing is that, because I'm also really into languages, right?
Okay.
You know, and you have to have your native tongue, quote unquote, right? And then you learn other languages, and that expands your mind and blah, 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 blah. But you do have to have your one thing that you're really, really good at, and your one thing that determines the lens that you see the world through, right?
Right.
So, you know, positives and negatives, but I mean, it's like anything. You just have to kind of find a balance to it.
Yeah. So what drew you to the competition side of martial arts?
Basically, originally, I wasn't a very good fighter at all.
Okay.
When I first started, just because of my personality, because I didn't particularly care if I won or lost. You know, I'm just like, well, it's cool. You know, and my Sabam, the first time he watched me in a competition, he said, yeah, this kid's never going to be a fighter. And he told me that to my face, right? He's like, yeah, you're never going to be a fighter. You don't have the right kind of personality. You don't have what it takes, whatever. But for me, it was just, I didn't really care about winning. It was more about, I wanted to understand this thing that I was doing, right? And the way you understand if what you're doing works or not is by testing it on other people, you know? So, I mean, that's the only way to know if you've actually mastered a technique or not, is you have to apply it on resisting opponents. So for me, competition was just about figuring out, like, okay, there's a spinning hook kick. How do I use a spinning hook kick? What's all the different ways that a spinning hook kick can be utilized? So sparring and competition was my way to test everything out and to see what worked and what didn't. And it was just my experimentation ground. But because I would do it all the time, you know, I just started winning a lot, right? But the goal was never actually to win. It was just to experiment. And then it was to simply enjoy the game. But as a function of the fact that I was just enjoying the game and I was doing it all the time, I just got good at it. Because I got good at it, I started winning. So that was kind of my impetus for getting in. But I never really had like a super strong desire to be the best in the world.
Right.
I wanted to be good at it for me because I wanted to understand it, you know, and that was basically it.
So did you primarily only compete in sparring, or did you also compete in pattern and weapons?
I competed in literally anything that I could compete in.
Nice.
So I didn't actually know any weapons until I came to Japan and I started doing karate and kobudo.
Oh, wow.
I'd never had my dojang in the States didn't do any weapons training.
Really?
So, but I competed in, the first thing I ever got a gold medal in was forms. So actually my first competition, I got a gold medal in forms. And then I just didn't win anything in sparring until almost my black belt is when I started actually winning sparring. Okay. But forms, I had always taken to naturally. And then board breaking and things like that, of course, as well. But I competed in anything that I could compete in.
So what was your what was your favorite board break?
The scissor, the jumping scissor triple kick. Nice. Right, where you do the scissor kick and then a round kick at the front, and then like, you know, or like the scissor kick, round kick, and then a punch. So you do 4 before you land. Yep. I used to love that, the jumping triple and quadruple kicks back in the day.
Nice. I know my instructor for his 5th degree black belt test back in '95 had to do a triple front kick double punch break before he landed. That was fun to see that in person.
Wow, 5 is intense.
Yeah, he was practicing a triple, and he was actually hitting all 6 targets, but never actually tried the break. I was kind of sad about that.
Wow, like 5 and 6 is intense, bro. Yeah, like the most I've ever done was 4.
I was never one for like a lot of jumping breaks. I'd like 1 or 2 boards maybe, but I was more of a power. I did like 6 or 7 bricks with like a forearm. I think that was probably my go-to one at demonstrations and stuff.
I used to love power breaking.
Yeah.
You know, the last power break I did was 4 1-inch boards, no spacers, for just a straight punch. And like, it felt like going through a wall. It was amazing. And then about 6 months later, and then afterwards, of course, my knuckle hurt for, probably 3 months after that. Mm-hmm. And then I tried it again 6 months later with just 3 boards. And then my knuckle swelled up to like 3 times the size. I was like, yeah, okay, wow. I think I need to back up off of this one. So, and then I just haven't tried it again since then.
Yeah, we had one of our masters that used to help at our school. Super nice guy, Master Don, just a good friend. I've known him. He's one of the old school black belts from the 70s. And he did a break one time in a demonstration. It was 5 boards, no spacers, with a WTF regulation chest protector wrapped around them.
Wow.
And I was like, I mean, like,
wow,
I knew he was going to do it, and I was still freaking blown away. It's like the power. I've never even heard of
somebody doing breaks with a chest protector wrapped around.
Oh, he did that a lot. Someone told me he's done 6. I don't know. I saw him do 5. And
what did he break with?
Right punch, straight punch.
Jesus, it was a punch?
Yeah.
Jesus, that's incredible.
Yeah. Oh, he had power. I hated sparring him. He was so
God, that's incredible. I've never. Wow.
I probably have it on video somewhere. Because he did it at a demonstration once, and I used to videotape. So I probably have it like on a VHS somewhere. But I know what I got. That's where I got the idea from. My son, when he was in, my son had got his first or second degree junior black belt in Taekwondo, and he was not really getting bullied, but there was a kid who's also in our Taekwondo class that was giving him a hard time, and another junior black belt. And I kind of talked about it to my instructor, and the kids were going to be learning the in the air turning sidekick. So I purposely worked with my son on that big time. And so my instructor, to demonstrate it, he brought 3 boards out. I think my son was probably 12 or 13 at the time. 3 boards and put a chest protector around him and had him break him, and he break him. And that kid's face, kid never messed with him again. He saw that power, and I'm like, and my instructor's like, that's almost as hard as your dad hits. I'm like, yeah, that was a damn nice kick.
There you go. That's how it's done.
Yeah, it was cool. I think I've done in the air. I think I've maybe done 3 or 4 before, but yeah, it's like I said, I would never try fly with a punch, especially with a chest protector. That would scare me a little bit.
God, that's amazing. I would love to see the video for that.
I'm trying to get him on my show. If I can get him on my show, I'll track down that video and release it with his episode, because I think people would get a kick out of watching that.
I would love to see that and share that, because when you look at Taekwondo now, you just don't see power breaking like that anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You see a lot of the really, really aerial stuff. And I mean, that stuff requires just absolute insane amounts of muscle strength and agility and timing and accuracy. Like on all those levels, it's absolutely incredible. The kinds of things that they're doing with board breaking in Taekwondo now. Yeah. But like, I just miss the old school power breaking, the whole, and because like the mentality of Japanese martial arts is the whole, like the one hit death, right?
Yep.
Which is why judo has 1 point, sumo has 1 point. Aido, you kill with the same, you kill as you're drawing the sword, right? Mm-hmm. It's a really Japanese thing. But I love that mentality. Because really, you think about it, like that's how you win stuff without getting hurt, is you just completely destroy them with the first hit. And then you don't get hit at all. Right?
That is very, very true.
So personally, I love the old school power break.
That's cool.
I wish you would see more of it.
Yeah,
but nowadays,
I would
everybody
agree.
Everybody likes like the high flying stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of that's cool too. I mean, and that was the thing with my Taekwondo instructor, back in the day, he could do both. I mean, he could do the power stuff and he could do the high flying stuff. I mean, he had to do in our system, what's called the chinning kick, but it's almost like the crane technique without holding your arms out like an idiot. But he had to do that. He did that one time. He had a guy stand on a chair and hold the board, tallest kid in class, as high as he could. And he did that break. And I'm just like, huh, like I could not do that. Like, wow. Yeah. Yeah. I've been lucky. I've been with him since 1994. He's an amazing instructor. He's just love training with him when I'm not injured and when I can actually go.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now, how long did you stay at that specific school?
The school that I trained at in the States.
Yeah.
I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm still under the same sabam. So when I go back to Michigan, I still train under the same guy.
That is
it's been
cool.
30 years now.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went from first all the way to 4th degree black belt with him.
Okay.
And then when I go back home, I still train at the same place. So, but it's just out here in Tokyo, I run my own dojang.
Okay.
And then I've also been training at a karate school for about 15 years now. And then I've been training in karate in Kobudo out there.
Nice. So what led you to the teaching side of martial arts? Where did the passion for teaching come from?
Basically, so the reason, like all of this kind of happened organically, because when originally, because I wanted to go to the 2004 Olympics myself, I had spent all these years training in Korea, and, my Taekwondo was really good. So I wasn't, I didn't go as far as I won 2 non-Olympic qualifying national championships. But I didn't win anything that was Olympic qualifying. I wasn't quite that good yet, but I had a very, very strong base of Taekwondo. I knew it very, very well.
Right.
And then when I came to Tokyo, I just wasn't doing anything with it. And I thought, in Japanese we say it's mottainai, like it's a shame or it's wasteful if you have a skill that you're not utilizing. So I thought, okay, I've got all this martial arts experience. I should teach it to somebody. So then I started a martial arts YouTube channel just to kind of teach it. And I started a show called How to Defeat Dudes that was just teaching self-defense for normal people instead of being like in camouflage pants, using a bunch of words that nobody understands and talking about weapons that it's impossible for any normal person to carry. It was just kind of simple, lighthearted self-defense stuff for just normal, average people, right? So I started that, and then I was doing that, and it was going really well. But then also I was afraid of losing the physical skills because you don't train, you lose the skills.
Right.
So I had one friend that was like, I want to learn Taekwondo. So then I just started teaching him, and it was just me and him for like months, right? And then eventually somebody came up to me, was like, hey, can you teach my kid? And I was like, okay. So then I had a kid, and that one kid turned into 3 kids, it turned into 5 kids. And then that one guy turned into like 3 people, 5 people, 10 people. And then eventually all of a sudden I had a dojang.
Nice.
Right. And that was never my intention. It just grew organically. And then from there, after I had been running the dojang for several years, I started offering people fight choreography classes too, because I didn't like the way that I had learned fight choreography. I thought there was too much missing from it.
Okay.
So I said, hey, for anybody that wants to learn fight choreography, I want to open up a fight choreography class. So then I started teaching people that were entertainers fight choreography. And then that's where the whole acting school that's built on top of the Taekwondo school came from.
Okay.
So, and
what's the name of the Taekwondo school?
It's called Quiet Flame Taekwondo. And then the film production company that's built on top of that is called Quiet Flame Productions.
And how many students do you have on the martial arts side, and how many students do you have on the film side?
Altogether, I've got around maybe 100 or so for both.
Okay.
Pre-COVID, it was a lot bigger. But, like that's just COVID did what COVID did, and then I dropped down to like 30, 40. And then it's just been kind of slowly rebuilding since then. Yeah. So basically, we have the Taekwondo school is the base of everything.
Right.
And then on top of that, what started as a single fight choreography class turned into fight choreography, then weapons for film, then horseback riding for film, and then, flexible weaponry for film, and then just turned into this entire training institution for the physical side of acting. And then on top of that is we do film production. And then the people that are also very good, we also cast in films and video games.
Very cool. Think back to that very first time that you're teaching just the one friend of yours to now. What do you think has changed the most about your teaching style over the years?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is we actually have a dojang now.
Yeah, nice.
Because before I didn't have a place. So like every week he'd be like, where are we meeting? I'm like, this park. I'm like, this rental room. And it would just, every week was literally a different place. So, but having our own space, it allowed us to have proper equipment. It allowed for people to just rock up, right? Instead of having to call me and be like, where are we meeting this time? But I think as with anything, as you get older and as you get more and more experience under your belt, you kind of develop a better sense for people, right? And the processes that people go through as they're learning, right? And then when it comes to teaching kids, you develop this sense of the stages of development that kids go through too. Because a lot of the kids that I'm teaching now, like my highest ranking black belt, he's 3rd dan. I've been teaching him since he was like 4. So I've seen and now he's like 15, right? So I've seen all the stages of life that this kid is going through. And with a lot of my junior black belts, I've seen them go through puberty and like all that stuff, right? So you learn to recognize the stages. So like as soon as, you have a kid who's like 5 or 6 years old, super into it, Taekwondo is the greatest thing in the world. And then he hits 7 or 8, and then all of a sudden he doesn't care anymore, and he's showing up, and he's like lazy and blah, blah, blah. Because he's into basketball, and basketball is his new favorite thing, right? So then you're like, okay, he's just going through that little stage where, this is less interesting, and this other thing is more interesting. But the point is just to keep them training, keep them motivated, keep them moving until they come back around, which they usually do. And sometimes that'll take a year, sometimes it'll take 2 years. But you just keep them going as best you can until they rediscover their motivation to be good at Taekwondo.
Right.
And I've seen some kids that, they were fantastic. Then they went on to have terrible attitudes. And then when those kids come back around, they're just amazing.
Yeah. I've seen that too. I don't run my own school, but I assist when I can. And it's funny. Sometimes, I'll bump into at a local high school and someone will be like, did you used to help teach my Taekwondo class? I'm like, when? Like, 15 years ago. I'm like, oh God, I probably did. Kind of makes you feel old sometimes, but
one of my favorite moments, because I knew it was going to happen, is when I is in, some little kid that I had taught forever ago walked into my dojang and he's like 6 inches bigger than I am. You know what I mean? Like I knew that moment was coming.
Yeah.
And when it happened, I was just really happy. I was like, he's way bigger than I am. I've had this little kid that I taught go on to be bigger than me. That's great.
I'll wait till you get to the point where you're teaching the children of people that you started teaching when they were children.
Yeah. That I can't. I can't imagine yet.
I've seen that so many times. It's like, wow.
Yeah, my sabam is actually, he's taught my son, which has been interesting.
That's cool.
He's way nicer to my son than he was to me.
Of course.
So, because, you go through, like, masters go through those stages too, right? Where you'll, as like a 30-year-old, master, they'll be so strict and just like so militant and everything else. And then by the time they get to like the grandmaster age, they're like the lovable grandpa that's just super nice to everybody and just lets everything slide. It's like, man, whatever, it's fine. Yeah, whatever, man, it's fine. And it's like, man, that never would have slid when I was coming up. But
a lot of it too is just society and how much it's changed. I mean, my instructor has said many times that because if I taught like I did in the 80s and 90s, I'd have no students.
Yeah, or you'd get sued.
Yeah, I know. And he said if I taught how my instructor did, I'd be in jail. Because he said so many times I'd hear stories of like when he was in class at 9-10 years old back in the late 70s, early 80s, and a kid didn't bow properly or talked out of space, and the instructor would go up and just smack him upside the head. I'm like, okay,
yeah, or like kick him in the face.
Yeah.
Can't
like, do that.
Bam! Right? Yeah. You were out of line.
Take the fun out of everything. No. So you mentioned also taking, karate and kabuto. So what style of karate are you training over there?
The style of karate that I do, it's a very, very small system. It's called Seishindo. But it's interesting because it's kind of an amalgamation of a few different Okinawan systems.
Okay.
And it's interesting because it's a lot more round and circular than most styles of karate that I've seen. Like if you watch the forms, it looks like they're obviously, you'd be like, oh, this form is that form. But they use the original Okinawan names instead of the modern Japanese names. And then the way that they move, it's a lot like softer, quicker, and rounder, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very, very interesting system. And then along with that, I got to train in, they have their own system of Kobudo form.
Nice.
So the Kobudo forms are actually really cool and interesting as well.
So what's your
and it's,
favorite weapon?
My favorite weapon for doing is the staff.
Okay.
I absolutely love staff form. If it's an apocalypse and I could only have one weapon, absolutely, it would be Kama.
Really? Okay.
Absolutely, beyond any shadow of a doubt.
Nice.
Because they're small enough that they can fit in your jacket.
Mm-hmm.
Like staffs are obviously, a pain in the tail to carry.
Yeah.
Kama, you can fit in your jacket, right? They're very lightweight, and it's just the things you can do to a human body with Kama are just absolutely horrible, right? Because basically you bury the blade in flesh and then you just rip it out. You bury it in and then you twist and you rip it out. Or you bury it between bones, you pop the bones and then you twist and rip it out. So basically you're dislocating bones and then leaving these horrible, gnarly holes that are impossible to self-seal with it. So it's just a terribly gruesome weapon, right? Nice. Just gruesome, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not actually, you're not slicing, you're ripping. It's just made for ripping flesh, right?
Yeah.
I think the only other weapon that for sure I would want to have in an apocalypse is a karambit knife.
Oh, okay.
Because karambits, the scariest weapon I've ever seen was a 1/2-inch karambit knife, right? Okay. So basically you can see the ring around the knuckle, but then the blade is only or maybe the blade was about 1 inch big. Mm-hmm. Which means that at the beginning of the engagement, they literally would not even know you had a knife in your hand.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, they would just think they're boxing with you, and then all of a sudden they're just cut to pieces and bleeding all over the place. Like I could not, and it's as fast as your fist can move, and it wouldn't ever get caught on anything.
Yeah.
I just could not imagine a more terrifying weapon than that. Because I mean, at the end of the day, what the vulnerability of weapons is them getting locked up or them getting jammed up or the fact that they're big and they're bulky.
Yeah.
But this thing was so tiny, right? And, because it's a karambit knife, it's held in the middle of your fist. So disarming is damn near impossible. A bigger karambit knife, maybe you could disarm.
Right.
But something that small, there's no way you could ever disarm it. That was the scariest weapon I've ever seen, by far.
And I know I'm reading on your website, you've also have a rank in judo and capoeira.
Yeah, I do.
Very cool. How long did you train in each of those?
Capoeira, I did maybe 4 years.
Okay.
Judo, I did while I was still at Michigan State.
Okay.
Just for just a few years. Judo was cool. It wasn't necessarily for me because I just like striking. And in particular, I like kicking because kicking is fun.
Yeah.
No other reason than because I simply enjoy it and I just think it's fun. But grappling is cool. It's just not my thing.
And how long did you do capoeira?
Capoeira was 4 or 5 years.
Okay. I love that style. I've never trained in it. I just think it's such a beautiful style, and it's something when I was younger, I wish I could have done it. I really do.
Same here, dude. They were because there were no capoeira schools anywhere within the state of Michigan when I was growing up. There were just none, right? And even then, that was before the internet. So, how do you even find one, right?
Exactly.
But I would have loved to have learned that system because I was, thin. I was wiry. Even I was really good at the taekwondo acrobatic stuff. I could have been amazing at capoeira had I learned it when I was younger. And I started training it here in my 30s, and I was happy to finally start getting good at it. But then I, tore the rotator cuff in my shoulder and blew out my knee.
Okay.
So then I just had to take several years off. And then, you know how it is. You take years off, and then just getting back into it is just hard.
Yeah. Especially a style like that takes a lot of physical ability,
a lot of flexibility, a lot of strength, a lot of fine-tuned muscle movement, and at that point I was already teaching taekwondo. I was already teaching fight choreography. I just didn't have the space, and I kept thinking I'm going to get back to it. But, now I'm 45 going on 46. Okay. Right. So.
Yeah. And I just turned 50 this year, so I don't think capoeira is anywhere in my future, unfortunately. I'm going to hopefully be interviewing a few capoeira mestres. I've been emailing about 4 or 5 of them back and forth. And also going to, hopefully later this summer, going to be interviewing Mark Dacascos from Only the Strong.
Oh, that would be rad. I've heard, I did a film with him not too long ago.
Oh, nice.
And I wasn't actually on set for the part that he was on set for, which kills me because I would have given anything to meet Mark Dacascos. I was like, oh my God, I don't believe I'm in a Mark Dacascos movie and I don't get to meet him.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which is a super bummer. But he seems like he is the nicest person on earth.
I've heard that from many people. And I've emailed him back and forth a few times. He was super, super cool and said he's willing to do the interview. I've actually interviewed his dad, which was kind of cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was fun to talk to. But yeah, it's I'm excited. Only the Strong is one of my favorite movies, so I'm looking forward to chatting.
Only the Strong was an awesome movie.
I know.
That was like quintessential 80s martial arts movies, right? It was so good.
Exactly.
Well, not 80s martial arts. That was 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was 91 or 92, I believe. I should know. Yeah.
Yeah. God, I loved Only the Strong so much. That was such an incredible movie.
Within 2 years of each other, I think it was Only the Strong and Perfect Weapon both came out, and were 2 of my all-time favorite movies.
Perfect Weapon was amazing.
Yeah, I had Jeff Speakman on the show. I actually trained with him. I moved to California to train with him in 96.
Oh, that's rad.
Yeah.
That's rad.
Cool.
The only thing, it's funny because knowing capoeira now, when I watch Only the Strong, I'm like, Mark Dacascos didn't really learn any capoeira for this movie. You saw him do a lot of the gymnastic stuff, but you see him doing very little actual proper capoeira, right? In terms of because what makes capoeira really unique are the takedowns. Oh. Martially, that's where capoeira is very, very strong, is the trickiness of their takedowns. And they've got so many styles of takedown. It's an amazing style for taking people off their feet.
Nice. Did not know that.
When you watch the film, you see him do a lot of back handsprings and backflips and gymnastics things that they have in capoeira.
Yeah.
But you don't see him actually doing that much proper capoeira, right?
Yeah.
Or that many proper capoeira techniques.
Yeah, I can't remember how long he trained in it for the movie. So I know I remember reading about that, but still a great movie. I watch it at least once a year. So
yeah, it is a fantastic movie.
Nice.
And Perfect Weapon was just super, super dope.
Yes.
That was such a good movie.
Love it. Now, so you're talking about movies now. How did that part start? How did that part of your life start? The movies, the acting, the stunts. How did that all come about?
Okay, so when I first got to Tokyo, I was working as a bodyguard, among other things, but I just needed to make more than I was making. So somebody said, well, you're really ripped. You should probably model. And nobody in Tokyo looks like you, because this was 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll give modeling a shot. So then I walked into an agency, and then I'm like, yeah, so I heard you can model and stuff, and I want to do that. And they're like, all right, well, what are you good at? And I'm like, oh, I'm pretty good at martial arts. And they're like, are you a champion or anything? And I said, yeah, I guess so. And they said, oh, okay, because we're looking for martial arts champions for a Godzilla movie. And I'm like, that's cool. And then they said, well, strictly speaking, the audition finished 2 hours ago, but do you have any pictures? And I said, no. And I said, all right, let's go outside and let's take some. So I just took my shirt off, and I was running back and forth, and I got one nice looking flying sidekick photo. There's a wedding happening in the background.
Wow.
But we got one nice looking flying sidekick photo. They sent it in. They're like, what the hell? Let him audition. So I went in for the audition, then I got into the movie. And then I was on set, and I was like, this is incredible. And I just did like a taeguk form. I did like a choreo for my audition because I didn't know what else to do.
Really?
So then, but in the beginning of the movie, Godzilla Final Wars, they had just a sequence where they had like people doing like a martial arts form, like with guns, like a gun kata. So like, yeah, you can do kata. That's what happened to that. So then I got in the movie as a martial arts extra. And then while I was on set, I was like, I went to one of the stunt guys. I was like, this is amazing. How do I keep doing this? And then he said, go and talk to that guy. And then the guy that he sent me to talk to was named Shimamura Yuji, or Yuji Shimamura. And Yuji is now maybe one of the top 3 action directors in Japan. But at the time, he was just up and coming.
Okay.
So then I showed him what I could do. And then he said, yeah, why don't you come and start training with my stunt guys? So then I just started coming to train with their stunt guys. And, and it was just, twice a week. But I just went every single week. And then at the time, I didn't speak a word of Japanese. I knew nothing about fight choreography. So I was learning how to do this with no language skills, right?
Wow.
And basically just following along. But then eventually, after training for like 2 years, they're like, yeah, he's good enough. And then they put me in a movie.
Dang.
So then I was like, okay, yeah, I got my first movie. And then after that, I thought, well, I've been learning this in Japanese. I don't speak Japanese. Maybe I should learn it in English. So I went back to the States and I started off studying theatrical stage combat because that's all I could find.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started training with the Society of American Fight Directors for theatrical stage combat. And then the same person that started the Society of American Fight Directors, Dave Boucher, also started the International Stunt School in Seattle. And then he said, if you're working in film, you really should be training for stunts instead of just stage combats. And I was like, all right. So then I decided to go to stunt school and I had no money. I was broke. So I just basically got a credit card, maxed out the entire thing. The day I got it, went to stunt school, got into stunt school, finished the course. And then as soon as I finished the course, I went back to Japan, auditioned for motion capture for Metal Gear Solid 5, got in, and then basically Metal Gear Solid 5 paid off stunt school times 3 because it was a year's worth of work.
Wow.
Right. So then that got me into like motion capture for film as well. So that's kind of how that whole thing happened. And then from there, I started realizing, okay, this is how stunts are done in the States. This is how stunts are done in Japan. This is the good things that I learned about stunts in the States. This is what Japan is really strong at. So then I ended up being this person that's kind of floating back and forth between both worlds and existing in both spaces, which is something that basically I still do. I'm kind of an in-between between the Western world of stunts and the Japanese world of stunts.
Okay. I mean, talk about being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of just like seeing an opportunity and being like, well, let's see where this goes. And then just running with it and then just figuring it out and then just making something out of it. And then we're like, oh, this is interesting. Let's see where this goes. And then same thing. And then I would just see an opportunity. I would run with it. I would figure it out. And then, I mean, that was half of everything I've ever done was that kind of thing.
And then when did you start producing your own stuff also?
So I started producing my first film because basically, like I said, I'd been doing the martial arts YouTube thing for a while, which is basically kind of how I learned to produce, was making that show. And then at the time, the YouTube studio in Japan had just opened up and they wanted to show that they could YouTube wanted to try and compete with like Netflix and Hulu in creating dramatic content. So then YouTube Japan didn't have any Japanese big YouTubers yet. I was American, but I was big for the time. So then they're like, hey, listen, we want to make a dramatic content to show that we can compete with Netflix. You're not a Japanese YouTuber, you're an American one, but you're here. Can you write a script? And if so, submit it. And then we're going to check a bunch of other people's script. And then if we take it, we'll give you a production budget to shoot a film. And I was like, all right, when's it due? And they're like, next month. So then I just sat down and I wrote a script in about a month and then submitting it. And then that script was called Fist of Absinthe. And then they were taking 10 scripts, the top 3 of which would get full access to Toei Studios and a full production budget. And then my script was one of the top 3 that was taken.
Wow.
So then I was like, okay, well now I've got this thing where like Google and Toei Studios is collaborating with me on a project. So then because I had Google and Toei, I went to Adidas and I'm like, hey, I just wrote an action movie about a guy who time slips to ancient Japan. He has to defend his sneakers against ninja and samurai. Do you have any Adidas that you want to profile? And they were just coming out with their Ultra Boost sneakers. So then Adidas got on board and they're like, well, we're not going to give you any money, but we'll promo your film to promo the shoes. Nice. So then all of a sudden I had Google, Toei Studios, and Adidas. So then I took that and then I went to an American director whose short films I had seen. And I'm like, hey, listen, I've got Google and Toei and Adidas to make a ninja movie in Japan. Do you want to fly to Japan and make a ninja movie with me? And he's like, sure, bro. So then he decided, I'd never even met this guy. So then he decided to fly to Japan, and then he brought a director of photography with him. So then all of a sudden, I had all these other parties, and I had an American director and an American director of photography. And then the whole thing just snowballed into a 20-minute action movie called Fist of Absinthe that, went on to have the title track on iTunes and all this other stuff, and then ended up getting picked up by Amazon Prime. It's still on Amazon Prime if you want to watch it, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So then that was the first big film that I made.
Okay.
And then since then, I've made 3 other smaller ones. And then after that, I decided that it was time to make a feature based on experiences that I had. This is a completely different conversation, but I also ended up working as a stripper in Japan's sex industry, which is the craziest thing ever because I'm just a martial arts guy, right?
Yeah.
But again, it was one of those things that, like, I was broke, I needed money, I was ripped, I was like, and somebody's like, you should be a stripper. And I'm like, does that pay? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, well, then I guess I'm going to be a stripper. So I just started stripping. And then while I was there, the club I was working at was super, super shady. It's since gone out of business. And I didn't know the word for it, but what I was watching was sex trafficking.
Okay.
So, and I was experiencing it firsthand, right? I always thought to myself, once I'm in a position that I need to tell the story of what I see happening to these women. And then that is the story of my first feature, Eastbound Traffic.
Okay.
Which is, it's taken me 10 years to make this film.
Wow.
But, now I've gotten, I think, 8 or 9 awards for the script. We've got the backing of the International Justice Mission, which is an anti-world sex trafficking organization. We've got, a major Japanese music label on board to have an artist sing the main theme song. And this has been an incredible piece of work.
So has that been released yet?
No, we're in the final stages of the editing now. We shot it last October, which was by far the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Because basically, like, we needed to create $1 million movie on, a $200,000 budget. It needed to look like $1 million movie,
right? Because
we don't have any big name actors in it. So when you don't have big name actors, you need just incredible quality of storytelling, quality of acting, quality of sets, quality of costumes and coloration. You have to nail everything, right? And we only had 20% of the usual budget to do that. So it was extremely hard. We were shooting like 20-hour days for like 2 weeks, and then when you're grinding like that, people start getting sick. So then you start losing crew because people are getting sick, which just doubles the workload for everybody else. And yeah, it was the craziest experience ever, but we pulled it off.
That's awesome.
And it's a beautiful film. And we've got 3 distributors that are interested, and, we're hoping to make the final sale within the next few months. And then from there, distribution by next year.
You hoping to get it released in the US also?
Absolutely. We're going to start in the States.
Nice.
Because for a Japanese film, it's very unconventional. And in general, Japan is extremely risk averse. So I think our best bet for this in Japan is if we started off in the States, we get distro in the States, we win a few awards in the States, then we bring it back to Japan. Okay.
Well, when it comes out, you'll have to let me know. I will definitely promote it for you because it sounds very interesting.
Absolutely. So basically I set it out again because we didn't have any big Hollywood stars in it. Mm-hmm. This film had to be groundbreaking in a million different ways. So I just set it out to make it the most incredibly groundbreaking film that I could on the budget that I had to work with. So if I could say so without it sounding like I'm tooting my own horn, it's really good.
That's cool. No, I'm excited to see it.
Thanks, bro.
So what are your thoughts on like MMA and the UFC? Is that something you're a fan of?
It is. I think the good thing about MMA and UFC is that it keeps things honest. Mm-hmm. Because, I think within the space of martial arts, you have a lot of people that get too into the mystical side of things without actually having any evidence to back up what they're saying. You know what I mean? You have guys that kind of get into like a lot of like theory about martial arts. Mm-hmm. Whereas with MMA, you just put people in a room, in a ring, and you're like, all right, see if it works or not. And then you get a lot of surprises, like flying side kicks work, jump spinning hook kicks work, like kicks off of the wall, all that stuff works. It's just about the time and the place.
Right.
So I think the good thing about MMA is that it keeps things honest. I think the bad thing about it is that the emphasis is on the wrong part.
Right.
Right. Because at the end of the day, I think, the world of martial arts is kind of broken up into 3 subcategories, right? You have proper martial arts, which are about the development of the human being. It's about making better people, right? Mm-hmm. Then you also have combat systems. Like, for example, karate is a martial art. Taekwondo is a martial art.
Yes.
It's about making a better human being, first and foremost, right? And the output is that you happen to learn how to fight too.
Right.
Then you have combat systems, for example, like Krav Maga, or like ninjutsu. Like the purpose is simply to have skills to end someone's life if they threaten you. Or it's simply purely and completely tools of warfare. That's what a combat system is, right?
Right.
And then you have ring sports, boxing, kickboxing, MMA, right?
Yep.
So, and I think MMA is a ring sport. And the good thing about ring sports is that you just fight all the time. So naturally, you're very, very good at fighting. The bad thing is that it doesn't cover a lot of the street scenarios that can actually happen. Like, what do you do if they have weapons? What do you do if they have a knife, right?
Right.
Or like multiple opponent scenarios, right? What's the treatment on multiple opponent scenarios? Ring sports don't have those, right?
Yeah.
Or even things like the most effective way, for lack of better words, the most effective way to quickly cripple someone if you have to.
Right.
Right. Traditional martial arts deal in that.
Yeah.
How do you take out somebody's sensory organs? How do you dislocate bones? How do you shatter and break bones? Right. Traditional martial arts have treatment on that. Ring sports do not. I think there's a little bit of an overemphasis on people saying like, this is what works on the street. This is what works on the street. This is what works on the street. Instead of saying, okay, well, it depends on what the goal actually is.
Yeah.
For example, with my son, he's 9. I don't want him getting hit in the head all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I mean, he's got his whole life ahead of him. He doesn't need to be getting concussions at 9 years old.
Yeah.
And I think personally, you have to look at like, okay, well, yeah, you learn how to be a super, super badass fighter. But at the same time, a lot of these guys, their careers are only 4 years long. And then they're just broken beyond belief.
Right.
If not physically, then because they've had too much head trauma. Whereas you look at a Taekwondo guy who's 80 years old, physically fit as hell, mentally super sharp, and can still kick very well.
Yeah.
Right. And then you think in the long game, who's ahead of who? So, I think you need to think about things like that when you're looking at martial arts, right? What kills me is, I've been teaching martial arts for 30 years. And when you have parents that will write off sending their kid to train with me purely because of the style that I teach, because I teach Taekwondo. Mm-hmm. Right. And they're like, oh, yeah, Taekwondo doesn't work on the street. I'm not sending my kid there. Right. And they'll just write it off instead of being like, let's look at who's the better instructor, or let's look at who's the better martial artist. Let's look at who the better human being is, the better person to teach my child.
Yeah.
Right. When you have people that'll just write them off or write off instructors purely based on style, that's something that I just don't agree with.
No, I agree completely.
Yeah.
So in all your years of martial arts, is there one philosophy that's at the top of your list?
Oh, that's a good question. Man, that's a very broad question too. I'm not sure how to scale that down.
Is there the first one that just popped into your head?
I think at the end of the day, it's just, it's so cliche, but it's just all about keeping a beginner's mind, man, and just staying really, really modest, staying very humble, remembering that you're always a student, and I think that's what it comes down to. So, and then just keep training. I've been doing, like I said, I've been doing this for 30 years now. Mm-hmm. I still train in every style that I can, and I still fight every kind of person that I can. And you just keep the learning moving, right? Yeah. I think just because you're a teacher doesn't mean you get to stop learning, right? Like my new thing is I'm studying Southeast Asian martial arts, like Kali and Eskrima and things like that, right? Okay. I'm a yellow belt in Kali, but that's fine, because that's what the journey is.
Yeah, that's very cool. All right, how about what's your worst martial arts related injury?
I've never really gotten hurt doing martial arts. I've gotten hurt real bad outside of martial arts.
Yeah, me too.
But I've never really gotten hurt in martial arts.
Nice, that's lucky.
Yeah. I think the worst things that I've ever had was when I was fighting in the U.S. Gold Cup. It was the first round, and I went to do a round kick, and the guy jumped back kicked me on the inside of my thigh.
Ooh.
So he hit me right in the groin while the muscle was extended. Mm-hmm. And as these things go, it just took out both legs, right?
Yeah.
And that was the first 30 seconds of the first round.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was horrible. I still won, but it was horrible. But that one took, but the insides of both my legs were just black, for months afterwards.
Dang.
Also, I was doing a kickboxing match here in Japan. And partially because of the language barrier, partially because the coach that I had just didn't care. They didn't tell me that I had to wrap my hands under my gloves. So I didn't have hand wraps on my gloves. I ended up injuring my right hand before the fight. I ended up injuring it in training. So I ended up having to go into that fight with just my left hand.
Dang.
And then same thing happened at the U.S. Gold Cup. But this time, that same kickboxing coach, he didn't tell me that, in Taekwondo, we fight with a wide stance because there's no leg kicks.
Mm-hmm.
In kickboxing, you can't fight with a wide stance because people will attack your legs.
Yep.
And I didn't know that. So I was fighting with a traditional wide Taekwondo stance. Right off the bat, the guy just blasted the inside of my thigh and again took out both legs. So, I had to fight a whole kickboxing match with nothing but my left hand, right?
Dang.
Which was horrible. I think those are the two things that come to mind when I think about real bad martial arts injuries.
Okay, cool. All right, I got a few fun questions we use to wrap up the interview. Now, Who are 3, 4, or 5 names you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
I mean, absolutely Jackie Chan.
Nice.
I think generically, everybody would have Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee.
Mm-hmm. They are picked a lot.
Yeah, Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee. Another lesser known one is William Oliver.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of William Oliver?
I don't think so. Doesn't ring a bell.
He was a karate grandmaster from Canada.
Okay.
When I was in the 80s, I had this VHS tape called Fighting Black Kings. It was about African American martial artists, and I saw a clip of this guy doing karate. And I was just watching him do forms, and it was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. It still is.
Wow.
Especially like that, the way that they kicked, in the same with Taekwondo, like the way that they kicked in the 80s and 90s was just so powerful compared to how they kick now.
Yeah.
And then, William Oliver, this guy, he was not a big guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's I've never met him, but in looking at videos, he looked like he was maybe 5'4", 5'5", maybe 5'6". He went to Japan to fight in kind of underground karate tournaments where there were no weight classes. And he was a little guy, so he just taught himself to do jump spin kicks. So he would fight with jump spin kicks at a time in karate no one was really using jump spin kicks, right?
Right.
And the guy was just a phenomenal human being, phenomenal fighter. I had decided at some point in my life I was going to go to Canada and visit him and just to be like, hey, I've been a fan of you your whole life. But by the time I decided that, I found out he'd actually passed away.
Oh, man.
And I was like, no, because I'd missed a chance to do that. But he absolutely would be on my Mount Rushmore.
Nice.
So, oh, man, who else? Of course, my own instructor.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because he taught me everything that I knew. And then, some of the guys I trained with. But I guess, if it's a Mount Rushmore analogy, it wouldn't really be about the people that trained you directly. It would be about... A lot
of people have picked only like their own lineage, their own instructors. That's why it's a personal one. It's whoever you want to put up there.
Yeah, yeah. Also, I would say that the Taekwondo master that I trained with the most in Korea would be up there. His name was Master Jang in Kwon. So he's a former Korean rock Marine. He would do stuff like when I was in Korea, he would go climb mountains barefoot, and he would make me climb these mountains barefoot with him. Wow. And Korea has volcanic mountains. It's not comfortable.
Yeah.
Right? So very, very sharp, rocky mountains. And we would just go and climb mountains barefoot and like water, meditate in the waterfalls. And he took me ice skating for the first time ever. I'd never been ice skating. And then after about maybe 20 minutes, I was like, okay, I'm starting to get the hang of this. And he's like, okay, great. And then he turned off the lights. And he's like, all right, go as fast as you can and turn before you hit the walls. and I'm like, how am I supposed to? I only learned to do this shit like 20 minutes ago, bro. Like, seriously? But he was just that kind of Taekwondo master, right? Like that kind of old school martial arts master. And cool. I learned so much from this guy. So much with this guy. I still kind of, worship the ground that he walks on. He was just amazing.
That's
right.
Cool.
And then, you got the Bill Superfoot Wallace,
Yep.
and
I love Bill.
All those guys of that generation were just amazing fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
The tournament that I fought in that I got that kickboxing tournament that I got hurt in, that was actually Benny Urquidez's Japan tournament.
Oh, wow.
So I actually got to meet Benny for that.
Nice. Yeah, I met him one time when I lived in Cali. I met Bill Wallace in Minneapolis in like 1990 or 91, and I met Benny in California in 95.
Yeah, just those guys were absolutely phenomenal. And then, of course, Sammo Hung, Yoon Gyu,
yes,
Donnie Yen. There's too many to even name, bro.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's a great list. All right, we talked a little bit about MMA. If you were to decide to step into the octagon, what would your walk-up music be?
Probably Till I Collapse by Eminem. That was always
nice.
That was always my saying. Yeah, that was always
can't go wrong with Eminem, man. That's a great song.
Nope, can't go wrong with Eminem. I'm from Detroit. You gotta love him.
Very cool. I wasn't a fan when he first came out, but after seeing 8 Mile, I became a fan, and definitely had a lot more respect for him after seeing that movie and listening to a lot more of his music.
I mean, it's one of those things where I haven't always agreed with everything that he's had to say.
Yeah.
But I don't think you have to agree with everything that someone says to respect them.
Right.
Just like I don't think you have to agree with somebody's political opinion or their political orientation to respect them, right? To still like them. I've been a fan of his since the first album.
That's cool. How about a favorite martial arts book?
That would be Keith's book, The Art of Fighting.
Nice. Okay.
By far. I mean,
Cool.
if you, it's just a culmination of all of his articles and things like that. If you've read it, it's incredible book.
It's on my list. I don't know how many episodes you listen to, but I tell a lot of my guests that I before I started the podcast, I used to read a book a week, and since I started the podcast, I've read like 3 in the last 3 years. So
yeah, because now you're making a podcast a week instead.
Exactly, and that takes a lot of time. So I miss reading, and I need to find a way to get back into it because I do miss it.
Mm-hmm.
How about a favorite martial arts video game?
Street Fighter 2.
Nice. That was quick.
Yep, no doubt.
Very
And
cool.
the coolest thing is I actually got to do some of the motion capture for Street Fighter 6.
Really?
So I did some of the movements for DJ.
Okay.
So being a part of the Street Fighter universe was just completely a dream come true.
That's awesome.
So I'm in the Godzilla universe and I'm in the Street Fighter universe. So that's 2 big ones off of the bucket list.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. All right. How about favorite martial arts TV show?
Oh man, wow, the martial arts TV show. Man, I don't know if I have a favorite martial arts TV show.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I have one. So to be honest, because partially is I just haven't watched TV in decades.
Okay.
It's completely like off my radar.
One from your childhood that comes to mind, or?
It's one of those things where I'm sure as soon as we hang up, I'll be like, this one, right? But off the top of my head, I'm blanking on it.
Okay.
So yeah.
How about a favorite martial arts movie, and you can't pick one that you've been in?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Movie by far, it would be the whole Matrix trilogy.
Nice. Okay.
I love the Matrix trilogy. So, and not everybody liked all of them. I liked all of them.
Yeah.
So just because I love intelligent storytelling, and I think I just loved it. And the mix of science fiction and martial arts is just absolutely dope.
Yeah.
So I just love that so much. So yeah, the Matrix trilogy was massively influential for me as, a filmmaker.
Oh yeah.
And, as a martial artist and everything. I love the trilogy so much. That's by far my favorite martial arts films.
All right. Any movie you've ever seen? Favorite movie fight scene?
Favorite movie fight scene? Probably the first dojo scene from The Matrix.
Okay.
From Matrix #1. I think that would probably be my favorite one of all time.
Nice. Very cool. Matrix is picked probably not as often as I thought it was going to be, but a lot of people definitely pick it when I ask these questions. It's definitely.
I think Donnie Yen in Flashpoint.
Yeah.
Flashpoint had some incredible fight sequences too.
Yeah, I love Donnie Yen. Donnie Yen is so good. I love the Ip Man series, and I'm actually not always a fan of remakes, but the fact that not technically a remake, more of but they're doing the Kung Fu movie based on the old Kung Fu TV series, and it's going to be starring Donnie Yen. Very excited about that. I love Donnie Yen. So such a good actor and good fighter. And
yeah, part of the reason I love Flashpoint is I know all the stunt guys in there.
Nice.
Because half of them are all the guys that I train with in Japan.
That's cool.
Because Donnie Yen uses a ton of Japanese stunt guys.
Yeah.
Or at least he has traditionally. So if we sat down and we watched it together, I'd be like, I know that guy. I know that guy. I know that guy. You know the scene where Donnie is running and then he's chasing somebody and he does a parkour move off of someone's back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the guy that I learned fight choreography from. Is the guy whose back he jumps off of.
That's really cool.
Or there's another guy who he's shooting at the ceiling and then somebody falls through a roof and slams their neck on a table.
Mm-hmm.
That was Shimamura-san, who was also one of the big people that I mentioned earlier that I studied fight choreography from.
That is really cool.
I know all those guys,
yeah.
Right? So
that's one cool thing about doing the podcast now is I'll be watching movies oh, they've been on my show. Hey, he's been on my show. She's been on my show.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's kind of cool. It's like my kids are like, hey, God, do you know a lot of people, Dad? I'm like, yeah, I know. I've been lucky. People keep saying
been around.
Yeah. People keep saying yes when I ask them. So that's the important thing. Well, before I let you go, anything that I have not asked you yet, or you just want to be sure we get out there, and I will put links for your websites and anything else you need me to when the show comes out. But anything we forgot?
No, off the top of my head, not really. Not that I can think of. It's been a great conversation. So Thanks for having me on. It's been awesome.
Yeah. It's I love your background, and I could definitely chat with you for hours, and hopefully sometime meet in person when you come back to the States or something like that. It'd be cool to just sit down and chat.
Rad. Yeah, that'd be cool.
It's been a blast, and I think the listeners are really going to love hearing about you. So I can't wait till the episode comes out.
All right, awesome. Thanks, bro. It's been great being on the show, and appreciate you reaching out.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.